Hello and welcome to Gimme Empathy. It's a podcast where I talk to people about things. Who am I? I'm Scott Mercer. I'm a musician and community radio host, and I have a paying job as well that's not as interesting. And I talk to other people who are often musicians, and sometimes in community radio, and sometimes have interesting paying jobs. My guest on this episode is actually all three of them. She has a band called Library Siesta down in Sydney. She works at community radio station FBI, and she has a pretty cool job working for a university as well. I've crossed paths with Bre a few times playing music, and Library Siesta were touring in Brisbane recently, and I got a chance to catch up with a few members for the podcast. This episode was recorded out at Salisbury at Ben Revy's house. Ben Revy used to be in Library Siesta, but now he lives in Brisbane. Thank you very much, Ben, for the use of your house. It was much quieter than mine because there's been some landscaping. So in the back of my house, there's like a house next door, the big-ish house and a yard. Now they're just building another house in the yard, as big as the first one. And they start with the power tools at 6:30 every morning, and they go all day. And it's not conducive to podcasting. Anyway, Bre's just the fucking best. I don't think you can spend any amount of time with Bre and not think she is just the best. I love her songwriting. This is like one of the most morbid podcasts I've recorded, and yet we probably laughed the most in all of it as well. I think I have a fair bit in common with Bre as well, and that may become apparent as the episode goes on. She had just woken up when we recorded. I've actually done a couple lately when my guests had just woken up. I like them. They're good. I think it's good to still have a bit of dreaminess. I think it's good to have a bit of dreaminess to you when you sit down and have someone ask you invasive questions. So this is episode number 37 of Gimme Empathy. Oh, and to provide context for what we're saying at the very start of this episode, just before recording, Bre accidentally sat on the microphone. That's what we're talking about. All right, episode number 37 with Bre Jones.
Sorry if it smells like my butt when you use it.
Oh, you'll be using that one.
Yeah, but when Paul uses it.
Oh, okay.
So basically, you just literally did what you're about to metaphorically do.
Yeah, talk out my arse.
Do you want to do
a little testaroo?
Checky check.
Checky check, testaroo. This is how I talk. Talky talk. Yeah.
Hey.
Talking. I like talking. I'm talking out my mouth, not my butt this time. Am I doing a good job?
You're doing a great job of talking out of the right
hole,
yep.
the right orifice. Should we close this?
Yeah.
Okay. Talking out the right orifice with Bre Jones.
That's the memoirs of Bre Jones.
Yeah. You've got to talk out the wrong orifice in order to learn how to talk out the right one.
Ah. That's deep, question mark.
Yeah, the orifices are quite deep.
Orify.
Deep orify.
Orifier? Lawrence Orifier. This
Have we
Rifier
started?
has gone on too long.
Is this recording?
Technically, yeah.
Brilliant.
Bre, how do we know one another for the benefit of the listener?
We both play in bands, and our bands played a show together once upon a time. Then they probably played another show together, and now we're friends.
Do you remember the first time we met?
Brighton Up Bar?
I think you may not remember this because I was just a punter. Library Siesta came up to Brisbane and did a show with We All Want To before I was in the band.
Oh, at that cafe.
At Southside Tea Room.
Yeah.
Years and years and years ago. And I'd never heard of Library Siesta before. And I really liked your songs. And while We All Want To were playing, I noticed you were singing along to like almost all the words. I thought that was amazing. And I went up afterwards and I bought an EP off you, which might have been, maybe the Honey Love time?
Okay.
EP.
Yeah.
But then I left it on a table in Southside Tea Room when I went home. So I had to go and buy it again on Bandcamp when I got home.
Oh no. Oh, do you want the money back?
No, that's fine.
Do you want the physical EP?
Do you still have some?
Yeah, I got some here.
Oh, yeah, I'll take one of them.
Okay. Well, I'll sort you out.
Yeah. And so years later, we were doing a Go-Go Fish tour, and Murray was booking the Sydney bands, I think. And I was like, Library Siesta's playing. I'm like, Murray, how did you know? I love that band.
Oh, so it was Murray.
I think it was Murray. It was either Murray or Harley who booked.
Wow. That's amazing.
And you're in Brisbane now doing some shows.
Yeah, we're not in Sydney.
No,
We're in Brisbane.
it's warmer.
It's definitely warmer. I'm enjoying it because it's a bit cold in Sydney and I can't afford heating. So, yeah.
So last night I saw you at the Bearded Lady
Yeah.
playing with a lineup of amazing legends. Spirit Bunny, Bear Hunt and Kelly Lloyd.
They're so good. Yeah, they were really good.
And tonight you're doing a dual solo show with Paul from
Yep.
the band, along with Tim Stewart and Mouseline,
Yep.
aka Ben Revy, whose house we are in.
We are in Ben's house and he did ask us to mention him. So
Shout out to Ben.
shout out to Ben.
Your house is cool out here overlooking Salisbury.
Yep, it's beautiful.
Bre, today we're going to go into some topics, but first, for people who aren't familiar with your band, I thought we'd go through and you could talk about some interesting things your band has done.
Okay, do I have to know what the interesting things are?
Well, yeah, I'll
You prompt me.
you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. That'll help.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes I forget what's interesting and what's not interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wrote a song called I Want to Meet Ben Lee,
I did. That's true.
and you put it out with your band.
Yeah.
And then you got to meet Ben Lee.
I did. And I felt like I don't need to meet him again after meeting him. And then now the song's not on the internet anymore.
Oh, I see.
So, yeah.
I was listening to Ben Lee on a podcast just this week, actually.
He's an interesting guy.
He is an interesting guy. I don't know if I would want to meet him more than once as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Once is good.
Once
I'm
is
glad
good.
I did. I'm glad I got to meet him. My weirdest Ben Lee story after meeting him, because I follow him on Facebook, and his Facebook gets quite interesting. And at some point, I somehow got into a 3-way argument with Ben Lee and my estranged uncle. And we had 3 different points of view, and my estranged uncle I really didn't understand what he was trying to say, and Ben Lee was trying to say one thing and I was trying to say another thing, and I was like, oh my God, this is too weird. I'm opting out. And so I left the argument.
What was the argument about?
Ben Lee had posted a photo of a lecture slide that he'd some kind of conference he'd been to about something to do with success and happiness. And the lecture slide was a graph that showed how much money people earned versus how happy they were or something, I don't know, or how successful they were or something. And there was some correlation, but the amounts of yearly earnings were in the millions. There was no it was comparing people who earn $2 million to people who earn
okay.
$20 million a year or something like
Right.
that. And I was like, you're a little bit out of touch here, Ben Lee. This is not... Do you really think that everyone who follows your page is earning millions of dollars every year? This does not... This doesn't say anything.
We didn't all have Catch My Disease in the supermarket ad. We're not all sitting pretty off that.
Yeah, so I just kind of pointed out to Ben Lee that he wasn't really making much sense and he was a bit out of touch. And then somehow my uncle chimed in and it was just I was like, what is this? This is the 21st century. That's what this is.
That's the melting pot that is Facebook, where you can call a celebrity if they're saying funny things, and then a random family member will also chime in.
Who you've never met.
Oh, never met your uncle?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
wow.
he was adopted out when he was a baby, and this is from my dad's side. So, and I don't think my dad or siblings, his other siblings, knew about this adoption. So it was one of those kind of stories. And my mum does family history research, and she found this guy, and we connected with him on Facebook, and But yeah, he'd been adopted into a reasonably wealthy family and is quite conservative and says a lot of things on Facebook that I don't agree with. And it's just so weird. And so I was like, oh, okay, it was just so strange.
Next Library Siesta thing, you put out an album, Future Haunts.
We did.
How long did it take to make that album?
Oh, like including writing stuff?
Yeah.
A very long time. Probably 5 years, I'd say, of like writing before we even recorded it. And then we recorded it like, I remember it was like a winter and then it was out by the summer.
What's the hardest part about making music for you?
Maybe, I think it's just because the reason I make music is to connect with people. So on one level, that's like in the lyrics I write and that sort of stuff. So the kind of messages I'm sort of putting out and people listen to that and connect with it, and that's really nice. On another level, it's like connecting with my bandmates and having this kind of almost ritualistic thing of practice every week and becomes this kind of institution. And so that's like another level. And then on a third level, it's kind of like connecting our band with other bands, and that becomes a community. So it's all about people for me. So the hardest thing is when there are people that you don't like and you don't get along with.
In any of those circles?
In any of those kind of levels.
Right.
And that's probably the hardest thing for me to deal with because it can just be really heartbreaking when people are really awful. And I don't take it very well. So that's definitely, the best and the hardest thing.
Most recently, you've been putting out a couple singles with Library Siesta.
Yes.
And you're on your tour right now for the new one, Negative Space.
Yes.
I like how there's always some information out there about your songs that you've written about them. Like you did a track-by-track breakdown for all the songs on Future Haunts. There's quite a bit explaining what Negative Space is about. Is that like a conscious thing that you don't want your music to be mystified and kind of unobtainable? Is that part of the connection?
For the track-by-track thing for Future Haunts, like I just got asked to do one for a publication, but I wrote it in French, like it was a French publication. And so I kind of wanted to have an English translation. So I just kind of put that on our Facebook because I'd done all this work writing it in French. And so that's the only reason that that's there. Yeah, the other ones, I don't really know. I kind of worry that maybe that's a bad thing, that I am holding everyone's hands and being like, this is what this song is about. You're not allowed to interpret it however you want. It's, that I feel like I don't intend to do it like that. So I'm thinking like maybe I should stop explaining things so much and just let the songs speak for themselves. But no, like I'm totally fine with people interpreting things however they want. There's a baby screaming outside.
Yeah, I wonder if that's coming through. Like a lot of your songs, they do feel pretty direct and personal anyway. Like I feel like there's some artists where every new release you feel like you're catching up on a new episode of, the TV show of their lives.
Yeah.
I think you and also Paul in your band, you're both like that in your songs.
Yeah. I can't help it. It just happens. I don't care. Basically, like I don't care. I'm not I don't really keep much to myself. I'm trying to learn to, think before I speak and keep things to myself because I'm a bit of an oversharer, I think. So, yeah.
Have you ever written a song that's actually gotten you in trouble with someone?
Ooh, a little bit. But like I haven't released it.
Oh, okay.
Kind of thing. Like I was in a relationship for a long time and sometimes I'd write some weird songs. And then my partner would be like, maybe you could not write that. And I was like, oh, okay, fair enough.
A few of those still got out there, though.
Those were the ones he was okay with.
Oh, okay.
There was other ones, like, very early on that were just, like, very, very silly.
Do you mind if we talk about Sil?
Yeah, that's okay.
So, Sil was in your band, your ex-partner, for a long time. How long were you together?
7 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Was
long
he-
distance.
Oh, right. So he was in France for all that time?
Yeah, he was in France and I was in Sydney, and we just sort of went back and forth a lot. In the beginning, I was a uni student. I'd have 3 months summer holidays from like November to sort of February-ish, like about 3 months over there. So I'd always go in my break. And he's a school teacher and he'd have 2 months summer holidays, you know, in the middle of the year. So we'd still have like 5 months a year together. And then I went over there for like a longer period of time, a couple of times, and he came here for like a longer period of time. So like overall we did get to spend a lot of time together, even though it was back and forth a lot.
And he played bass in Library Siesta
He did.
while he was here.
Yeah.
What's it like having a partner in your band?
Like a bit frustrating, but not in the way you'd expect, because for him, he has another band, his main band. It's a trio and the other two are a couple. And so in that band, he sort of always sort of feels like they will sort of make decisions and organize themselves and stuff. And so like just because they live together and stuff. And so he's always sort of the last to know what's happening. And so things can sort of like that dynamic was a bit weird. And so, and he was just always so, or in that band, he's just so like, oh, like I don't want to like give my 2 cents. Like you guys can just, you know, make decisions. Like he's just sort of happy to tag along and make it like more of their kind of thing in a way. And so it meant that like in our band, which is very like, especially when he was in it, the way we worked was very diplomatic. And so we would always make decisions together and he would just never give his opinion. And it was like, oh my God, just tell me what you think. And sometimes like he would agree with me, but he just didn't want to say it. And it was frustrating because there was like 2 other people. And so it would just be like these 2 people and then my opinion on my own. And he agreed with me, but just wouldn't say it.
Was that because he didn't want to appear like it was favoritism or something?
Oh, just because that was his habit to just not say what he thinks. He just, it was frustrating, but it was fine. Like not in a way that was actually bad, just like a little bit annoying.
After you eventually broke up, it sounds like there were a few songs on Future Haunts that were about kind of the end.
Breakup.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Did he have any feedback on those ones?
No, he didn't. I mean, I sort of said earlier that like, you know, there were songs that he was like, maybe you shouldn't say that. But like I should say that he was always like very supportive and still is, and just sort of like, oh, I don't want to censor you, and like it's your art and your creativity, and like, you know, even when it was like inappropriate things that I was singing about, he was still like be like, oh, well, I don't really like that you're doing that, but you're welcome to, you know, do whatever you want. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, I won't sing about those inappropriate things. Yeah.
So would you want to move on to some topics? Right?
Okay.
For today, so I have a big list of topics that I give to some guests, and we're doing a lucky dip today. So Bre has selected 10 topics to talk about, and we're going to pull a few of them out of a hat.
Yep. Can I just say that when you sent me the list, like every topic, I was like, oh my God, I don't want to talk about that. Oh no. Ambition? I've got none. What's there to talk about? Motivation? Got none. What's there to talk about? Money? Got none. I had a little freak out. But then I sat and I looked through. I was like, oh, okay, no, those things I can talk about. Maybe. We'll see.
All right, well, let's put them in the hat.
Oh, there is actually... Oh, that's what the hat's for. Yeah. I just thought it was your hat, like, cool hat.
I am shaking the hat.
It's true.
Okay, first topic, Bre.
Oh, God. Oh, friendship. That's my favorite thing.
It's the most wholesome thing I've ever heard.
It's actually true. It's my favorite thing.
You're about my age, like 30-ish, right?
Yeah.
As you get older, do you find friendship harder to hold on to?
I find it easier, actually, compared to 10 years ago, I'd say. The reason is because when I left school, you know, that's obviously like a big change in how sort of friendship works, because when you're in school, it's institutionalized and you see the same people every day, and it's easy, well, for some, if you're not in a terrible situation at your school, it's easier to sort of like maintain friendships because you're forced to spend certain amount of hours together, and then you sort of leave school and then you have to sort of figure it out on your own. You have to make more effort to spend time with people. And so when I left high school, I deliberately picked a uni that was in a suburb I knew nothing about and where I knew no one, because I'd been through a rough time in my teenage years and I was kind of sick of the area I grew up in, and I wanted something new. And so that meant that like I literally knew no one. Or actually there was one person I knew, or a couple of people, but there was just like, it wasn't heaps of people that I knew going to that same uni. And actually like very few people from my school went on to uni. Like, you know, I sort of had to start again, which was what I wanted, but it was very hard. And so it's during that period, that first year of uni when I was 18, that my disease started.
Which disease is this?
It's called, we didn't have a diagnosis like this accurate for a really long time, but it's psoriatic arthritis. And so when it started, it was absolutely terrifying. It's kind of slow at first, but eventually, like first it's sort of, my knee was like really weird and it was swollen and really painful. And then it was like one of my hands. And eventually it got to the point where I couldn't walk and the pain was so excruciating I couldn't sleep. I was just like screaming and crying for like 3 days straight. And at that point I didn't even have a bed. I was just sleeping on a little mattress on the floor and stuff. And so like getting out of bed was impossible, and I couldn't leave the house, and I lived on the 3rd story of a really crappy apartment building. Anyway, this is a very long story. But it meant that like there was this point where I really needed people around me because I was so scared. Like I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know if this was going to be my life from now on, just constant pain, not being able to do anything, not even being able to think, because there's just nonstop pain. And I was terrified. And I remember like messaging like everyone I knew, asking if they could come and see me, and no one came, because it was like this weird point where everyone else had sort of gone off to live their lives and I didn't really have anyone. So that was like, because that happened at that point, it became it was a lot of other people probably were like a similar level of loneliness to me, but it was just so apparent because I really needed someone and I didn't have anyone. And then like a year after that happened was when I met Sylvan.
So how did you get out of that situation?
Eventually, like the doctors kind of got my symptoms under control, like reasonably under control. It was just like a period of about 3 days where it was that bad. And so like if I didn't have the medication I have right now, then yeah, things would be very, very different. Like I have very effective medication, but like it's something that's constantly like hanging over me because it's a degenerative illness. Like I'm like, oh God, this is probably like, and it's happened since then, where I had to go off one of my medications and the other one wasn't like keeping it properly under control. And so I've had a couple of times in my life where I've been like, you know, lying on a floor waiting for someone to find me in like really excruciating pain. It's horrible. Don't recommend it if you can avoid it. And so it's very anxiety inducing knowing that waits for me in my future as well. But then I try to think that like, hey, everyone a lot of people end up that way at some point in their life. It's just that I've had a taste of what it's like, and I know I don't want to be that lonely again, which is why friendship is so important to me. So like to continue on, like I was in that state and then, you know, met my ex-partner and I was like, oh my God, wow, I'm in love and I've met someone and they want to listen to all the crap that comes out my mouth and they actually interested in me. This is amazing. Oh, crap, they live on the other side of the world. Oh, well, I'm just going to, put everything I have into maintaining this long distance relationship to make sure it works, because this makes me so happy and, I don't feel lonely anymore. But in doing so, I really isolated myself. Like, I did meet people and stuff and I did make friends, but that was just such a low priority to me because I'd committed so much to this relationship. And so even though I had someone, it was really just someone. It wasn't, lots of people. And I really kind of took my friendships for granted, like, during that time. Yeah, and so when that breakup eventually happened, I was sort of left, like, feeling like I did in the beginning, like, oh, crap, like, because I'd really isolated myself. That was when I really started to value friendship. And now I have lots of friends and I'm very happy.
So what do you do to make friends or to go back and, like, reinvest in those existing friendships?
The band helps. As I was sort of saying before, like, music is really important for me in terms of connecting with people. And so just on the first level with my bandmates, like, they're my best friends. They're so amazing. And just being able to see them every week in that sort of institutional way, that school sort of once was, that's really great. And then I also volunteer in community radio, like you do, but a different radio station. And that really helps because that radio station works in a way that's very communal and it really fosters a lot of relationships. And so that's really great. And just, like, going to shows, like, all the time. Like, last week I went to shows Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And just, it's so nice just to be able to rock up and not message people and be like, are you going to go? Are you going to go? And just rock up and know that you're going to see your friends there. You're going to see someone there. Like, it's just such a good feeling. It's so good.
You pretty much just described my social life as well. Based, entirely on bands and playing in and people. Like last night, I knew everyone.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And, like, sometimes I go to a thing and I know everyone, but they're all from different places and they don't know each other.
Oh, that's the weirdest thing, isn't it? when multiple friendship groups are mixing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it makes me so happy. I love it. I love it so much. Yeah.
Do you have friends who aren't involved in music? You find you have to make, like, an extra effort to keep in contact with?
Friends that aren't involved with music. I'm sure there are some. I'm sure there are some. I'm trying to remember who they are.
Like, I've got a few, but I've had to, like, create activities to see them regularly. Like, I have one friend, he sometimes goes to gigs, but our main thing is we'll get together every week and watch Twin Peaks.
Oh, and that's nice.
That's our thing we do. And then I have another couple of friends and we've started playing Dungeons and Dragons together.
Oh, cool.
Which is really fun and is also a great way. Because, I was feeling bad sometimes that I don't keep up with, non-musical friends as much.
Yeah, I think, like, I got friends that don't play music, but they'll still go to shows and stuff, so I still kind of see them. Or I've got friends that don't play music much and don't really go to shows much, but they're still sort of involved in a way. Like, I'll bring them in for, like, creative stuff. Like, I got a friend who I'm currently helping, who's helping me to make a video for Negative Space kind of thing. Like, so they're still sort of connected to this music thing, like, in a roundabout way. But yeah, I don't think I have anyone that I've managed to actually create, like, a regular thing with outside of music.
So you started volunteering at FBI Radio.
I did.
Down in Sydney. How long ago was that?
About 2.5 years.
And what's your role there now?
Good question. I don't know. I am the music library coordinator. So I coordinate all the volunteers who work in the music library. And I produce mornings with Alex Pye. I'm taking a break from that at the moment while I'm on the tour, and I've also I'm swamped with work at the moment. I recently got asked to do a new role, but the day I tried to do my first kind of shift with it, I had a big panic attack and had to go home. And then I had to take a couple of weeks off because of this and like the tour. So I think they might have gotten someone else for that role.
Have you made lots of new friends at FBI?
Oh, a lot, yeah. Like everyone who's there is, generally interested in music. A lot of people are like media students and they're getting experience for their careers and that sort of stuff. But even so, like only certain types of people will volunteer, I think. And a lot of those types of people are just very similar to me, I guess, in a way. And it's just such a great way to be able to find like-minded people. Oh, I'm out of tea.
Do you want some more? We can have a break if you want.
Yeah, I really like tea.
Sure. Bre, can you tell me about your friendship with Paul?
Yeah, I can tell you about my friendship with Paul. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's a funny friendship.
How did you meet?
He came to a house gig at my place and saw my band play, and he thought we were good. And I thought he was very tall.
He is very tall.
I
I didn't realise he's even taller than Tim Stewart.
He is. And Tim Stewart is a tall man.
He's very tall. They were together last night and
he's a good like half a head taller than Tim, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a big head, so that's quite half. That's actually like a regular head.
So Paul was initially playing drums in Library Siesta?
Yeah, and so we met and then we became friends online. We met just before I went to France for like quite a long period. And I was listening to his debut solo album a lot, like while I was overseas, and chatting a lot to him online because he's a massive insomniac and keeps weird hours. And so that was convenient for me because I was all by myself overseas and he was up at the hours that were like daytime hours for me. So I just like talked to him lots online. And when I got back, me and Eva were like, okay, we needed a new drummer. And I'd sort of worked out that on his solo stuff, he'd played everything on it. So I was like, oh, he's not really a drummer, but like he can hold a beat. Let's ask this guy. And so that's how we got Paul in. But then he got sick of drums. Understandably, I hate drums. I hate playing drums. Oh my God. And yeah, so eventually we decided to get a new drummer and put him on bass instead. And he's happier now, I think. You can ask him that when you talk to him.
What kind of role does Paul play in the dynamic of the band?
What kind of role does he play? You mean like not music dynamics, but friendship dynamics?
Yeah.
I don't know. He's just very reliable. He's a very reliable character. And so like, yeah, he's just very consistent and yeah, and he'll just always do what I say, so that's great. Yeah, I mean, musically sometimes he'll disagree with an idea, and if the others also disagree, then we don't do my idea. But he's also just like I know this isn't what you sort of asked, but like musically, because he's trained and he has perfect pitch, and he has a degree in music, like he just knows so much more than me because I'm so DIY and just coming at it from the complete opposite spectrum. And so he's good at giving me confidence, actually. I'd say that's what's really important, because he's so good at like, if I start a song, he'll be like, this is exactly what's good about it. He'll be very specific. He'll be like, and it doesn't make any sense to me because he's going on about all these terms that I just do not understand. I'm like, but it makes me feel good because he's getting really excited. And he's like, wow, like there aren't many songs that do this and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, I've got no idea what you're saying, but it's making me feel like I'm a real musician. So great. And so he's just very encouraging. Yeah. And he's good at like recognizing which parts of the songs need more work or need to be rethought. And through working with him for so many years, like I've developed that skill a lot more. He's just good at teaching music, and I love Paul. He's so great.
Is he the kind of person who has certain rules about like what you flat out can't do in a band? Like you can't end a song like this, you can't.
He used to. He's softened up a bit. I think I've become a little bit more like him and he's become a little bit more like me. So he used to have like rules that just, some of them just really didn't make sense to me at the time, but now they make sense to me. Some of them were just like actually very silly, and now he's like loosened up and he's like, oh no. And he doesn't believe me when I tell him like, you didn't let me do this thing. He's like, what, really? I'm like, yeah, you didn't. You didn't let, and I hold grudges, and it's great.
Do you have an example of one of each of them? One that you...
Yeah. So one that definitely makes sense to me now was not playing the same songs in the same key back to back.
Oh, yeah.
Like I would be suggesting set lists that were all in the key of C, and he'd be like, no, we can't do that. And I'm like, but why? I don't understand. This is weird, Paul. Now I understand. And then he just sort of used to be really strange about old songs. And so like when we put the album together, I wanted to work on this old song called Boy Bands that we had from like years and years and years ago. And he just refused to, like, so we were in the studio and I was like, okay, we have the time to record an extra song. Why don't we record 11 songs? And the 11th song would have been this boy band's one. Just because it doesn't cost us any extra money, we may as well just record 11 songs. And he was like, no, it's got to be 10 songs and it's got to be half an hour. Like the album has to be 10 songs and half an hour. I was like, okay, Paul, okay. It's got to be 10 songs and half an hour. But that doesn't change the fact that we can still use this time and money to record an 11th song just to have up our sleeves. And he's like, no, we can't do it. I was like, but no, Paul. Let's just do this 11th song. He's like, no, it's old. I don't want to do it. And he doesn't believe me that was the case.
I'll definitely ask him about that.
He doesn't remember. And so, yeah, I made a spiteful EP for his birthday because he really likes spite. And one of the songs on it was that song that he didn't let me record. But then he didn't understand why it was on, like what was spiteful about it, because he couldn't remember that he was so weird about this song.
I did want to ask you about this EP because it's got to be one of the most elaborate, vengeful birthday present. This is like, I think it's been brought up to you before. This is like Scott Tenorman Must Die level revenge stuff you did. So walk us through this solo EP you made. First of all, what's it called?
It's called Fuck You, I Won't Do What You Tell Me, Paul.
And what is the concept of this EP?
So it's a spite EP that I released on Paul's birthday as a present to him. And there's 4 tracks, and it's basically the whole concept of it is that I was doing everything that he hates in music and that he doesn't let me do in Library Siesta. I just put it all in one EP just to like mess with him.
So for example, is the first song the bed song?
Yeah, bed song. That's probably my favorite. There was one song, it's actually Psycho Genius, it's released now. At the time it hadn't been released. And he was like, the lyrics have the word bed in it too many times. And it just had like 4 beds. And one of them was just because it was in the chorus, and the chorus repeats. And I was like, it's not too many beds, Paul. He's like, yeah, there's too many beds. You're going to take some beds out, Bre. It's not a hospital. So I was like, oh, yeah. And I did. Like, we compromised. He wanted 1 bed. And I was like, we're allowed to have more than 1 bed. So there's 2 beds in the song. So I took 2 beds out. But then this song on this EP, Bed Song, it's just like the idea was just to have the word bed as many times as I could fit into, you know, like a 3-minute pop song.
How many times is the word bed in that song?
I'd have to check, but it's like well over 100. I think it's something like 117 beds.
I really like that song too. Like sometimes I have a really comfortable bed that I love, and sometimes on cold mornings where I don't want to get out, I'll just hug my pillows and think, I love my bed.
Amazing. Yeah. I love beds.
So there was that song. There was the song he didn't want recorded.
Yeah.
There was a cover of one of Paul's favourite songs.
Yeah. And so for that one, I literally like printed out the lyrics and then cut them up and then just rearranged them and then worked out how to sing those new lyrics to the original melody.
And this was to Pulp's Common People.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And there's no common people in that verse. Like the lyric common people has been taken out completely.
But there's a lot of, because everybody hates a tourist. Yeah. There's a lot of that line.
Yeah, that's the chorus, see?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I did there. And then the final track was just about like how great Melbourne is, and he hates when people, and it's about like why people should move to Melbourne, and he hates when friends move to Melbourne. So, and they're all in the key of C.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, that's.
How did Paul react?
He loved it. I knew, like, I wouldn't have done this if I thought he wouldn't love it. Like, he loved it. He thought it was great. Yeah, he really. Oh, well, you can ask him what he really thinks when you talk to him.
So you wrote and recorded this all on your own?
I did.
How long did it take you?
Much longer than I was expecting. I was like, yeah, I can do it in a day. It took more than a day, especially because I'm such a terrible drummer. The drums, I hate drums. But yeah, I'd say like a week, but like doing other things as well.
Yeah.
Trying to do my regular commitments, but yeah, it was good fun though.
And like is that the only solo release you've had?
I also put up a cover that I did recently of a Backstreet Boys song because like I'd left my headphones in Melbourne with a friend and then he had to mail it up to me, and I was like, oh, let me know how much I owe you for the postage. And he was like, just do a cover of this song. Like he wanted to be paid in a cover. So I did that, and that's on my SoundCloud.
That's pretty cool. Which song is it?
What is it? Who you are.
Oh yeah, As Long As You Love Me.
That one,
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, yeah. And I think I changed it to As Long As You Love Bre. Just in the title, but not in the lyrics, yeah. You
seem to like doing these musical jokes for your friend.
I do. Yeah, well, see, that's what I mean. Like, I use music to connect with people. And jokes are a great way to connect with people. So, yeah, I'm very silly.
Shall we take another dip into the topic hat?
Oh, okay. That was a good topic, though.
Number 2.
How many are there going to be?
Don't know.
I feel like this is the wrong one. I'm going to put that one back.
Okay.
Oh, well, that one's a skinny one. I don't like skinny ones. Okay. Well, this one feels weird. I like this one.
Okay.
Dreams. Yeah.
Do you remember many of your dreams?
Considering like you're supposed to dream every time you enter like REM sleep, I'd say no. But I do remember like more than some people. Yeah.
Is it? Do you ever have recurring dreams?
I used to. When I was a teenager, I'd have reoccurring dreams. Like they would all start out differently, but at some point I'd be outside and it would start raining, and then like the water would start filling up and it would start flooding, and then I'd drown, and then I'd wake up like in a sweat.
Wow.
Like really freaked out. As context, I can't actually swim in real life. So I think that's why. And I have like a fear of like large bodies of water.
Thalassophobia, is that what that's called?
I don't think so. I think it's called something like aquaphobia.
Oh, okay.
Like something really predictable.
There's a subreddit called Thalassophobia, and it's just like pictures of the enormity of the ocean and like...
Oh, that might be a more specific one then. Yeah, maybe, it's probably that. It's probably that. Because like I don't mind having a bath.
Yeah.
I quite like having a bath, especially if you put like a little bath bomb in it or something. That's real fun. And bubbles. Oh, it's great. Love baths. But yeah, it was weird. Like I was having these reoccurring dreams, and then one day for like a visual art project at school, I did an artwork like about that fear that I had and the dreams and stuff like that. And then, you know, in that process, we had to sort of like write rationales for our artwork and that sort of stuff. And then the dream stopped.
Wow.
Yeah. And I haven't had one of them since.
You worked it out through art.
I did. Oh, maybe. I assume so. There's a correlation anyway.
Yeah. It's funny how you can sometimes work stuff out just by putting it out into the world.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that even something like journaling, like if you're fretting over something, just writing out everything you're feeling about it can make it better, or talking to someone.
Exactly. And, yeah, music really helps me. Like, that's my main outlet now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so weird. Like, I've never had those, like, drowning dreams since. I'm still terrified of water, like large bodies of water. But, yeah, fuck boats. I hate boats. Oh, my God. I once... Scream Theatre, my favourite band in the world, they played a show on a boat down in Melbourne, and I was in Melbourne, and I went. And I was like, okay, this is my favourite thing in the world, Scream Theatre. Maybe after Friendship. Maybe same as Friendship. Friendship and Scream Theatre.
Well, they're linked. You're friends with Scream Theatre.
True. So one of my favourite things and something I have a morbid fear of combined. I was like, maybe they're just going to cancel each other out and it's going to be fine. But no, like, it was actually, like, terrible because there were so many bands before them as well. Like, initially when I get on a boat, I just kind of start laughing hysterically because I'm, like, so uncomfortable, but I'm just, like, laughing and I've just got all this adrenaline, like, pumping through me. And it's just kind of, like, weird. But then at some point, like, the prolonged exposure to this thing that I'm terrified of turns into, like, the laughing turns into tears at some point. And so, and because Scream Theatre were playing last and there was like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 bands before them, by the time they had actually like started, I was just like, loud noises are not okay right now, even if they're beautiful loud noises. And I just had to, there was like 2 levels and I had to sit on the other level in the fetal position for a while and just ride it out, which is terrible.
There's nowhere to go on a boat.
I know, except the ocean, which is the actual problem. So, yeah. So I'm a land gig only gal.
What about in the sky? Would you play a gig in the sky?
Yeah, I'm totally fine with the sky. Even if I'm in like an airplane over the sea, that's fine because I'm not physically close to the sea. It's weird. It's only like when I'm close to it. Like piers and boats. Can't do it.
Would you only play Neutral Milk Hotel covers if you were in an aeroplane over the sea?
No. No, I
was thinking of a really, as soon as you said in an airplane over the sea, like I stopped listening to what you were saying. The gears just started moving to fit in a Neutral Milk Hotel reference. Honestly, I don't think I nailed it. I think if I were a professional comedian on a podcast, I could have fit that in better.
No, I think you fit it in perfectly. I just did some blocking and was like, no, I wouldn't. But that's because I literally wouldn't. But I do like the joke. It wasn't a no, I don't like your joke.
Yeah.
I love the joke. Okay. It's just, I take things very literally. And I was like, I've never done a Neutral Milk Hotel cover before, so I probably wouldn't if I was in an airplane over the sea.
I think Library Siesta would do a cool NMH cover, like, especially if Eva was playing with you, because her style reminds me a lot of the Elephant Six kind of guitar sounds.
Yeah. We can work on that. Tell Paul, he'll make it happen. He's like my secretary.
What's the most memorable or like weird out there dream you've ever had?
I've probably got weirder ones, but recently I had a really strange one where I was on like a massive field, like it was several football fields, and there was like some kind of weird athletics carnival, and I had a big suitcase with me. And I left it with some people while I had to go do some athletics event. And I asked them to mind it, and then they lost it. And I got really angry at them. I was like, oh my God, how dare you lose this suitcase? That's rude. Fuck you. And then there was like some natural disaster coming. And we all had, I don't know what it was, a cyclone or something. And we all had to go into this building that was like at one end of this massive field. And then it wasn't a natural disaster. It was actually like army tanks. And then they were all like behind that big building we were in. There were all these like little houses and stuff. And so we all had to like seek refuge. Then I was like hiding somewhere in this like little shitty house with some people. And these like army people had all these guns and they were getting people out on the street and they were shooting people. But they were like only shooting people of colour. And I was with some people of colour and they got us out on the street. And I was like, hey man, you can't do that. That's shit. And then they were like, nah, that's what we want to do. I was like, no, don't do that. That's terrible. And then I took a gun from one of them and shot one of them. But then there were no bullets left for the other ones. And it was just like water. It was like a water gun. And so I just shot water at this person with like a big rifle. And it just like the gun turned out that it could switch between both of them. And there was just a switch and I'd accidentally switched it from the bullets to the water gun. So, and then I woke up and I was like, that was a fucking... And then I woke up and I woke up feeling angry about the suitcase.
The suitcase, not the people being dragged out of their homes and killed.
No, but I was angry about the suitcase still. And then, like, once, like, I became more conscious, I was like, that was fucked. And then I was like, why was I angry about the suitcase when I woke up? I don't know. That was a weird dream.
I really like long dreams that when you wake up, you think you've had 2 or 3 dreams, but then you realize they were actually all linked.
Yeah.
They just changed dramatically from one thing to another.
Yeah. That was what this kind of was. It started out as an athletics carnival and ended in, you know, genocide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was weird. That was very weird.
Do you have nightmares very often?
Not anymore. Yeah, it's just those reoccurring dreams were the only like real nightmares. I've had like quite a lot of sleep paralysis.
Oh, wow.
And so they used to be like, they'd feel like really awful nightmares because you're kind of like trapped in your body and you can sense that there's like someone in the room or something and you can't like open your eyes and it feels like a threat. But it's not, there's no one actually in the room. Like, you know, it's just a dream kind of thing. But I had sleep paralysis last night, but it's become like this thing that I'm actually really chilled about when it happens. Like I don't freak out anymore.
So are you actually awake when you have sleep paralysis? You just can't move?
I think it's like a weird sort of semi-consciousness thing. Like I think there's like part of your brain that's like conscious and the rest is not.
Right.
Or something because you're still like dreaming. It's still like it's not quite reality.
So at this stage, can you recognize when you have sleep paralysis and you're like, oh, it's just this again? Kind
of. Like it's become so familiar that it's not scary anymore.
Right.
But it's not, I don't know if I would be able to, in my dreaming state, articulate it as sleep paralysis, but it's just sort of like, oh yeah, this is a thing that happens sometimes. People walk into my room and I can't open my eyes and talk to them.
Wow. So even when you're in like you slept in this room last night, which is different to
my regular room
because we're in Brisbane in Ben's house. But so even here, like it was still kind of familiar enough to be. Oh,
I think because I knew I was on tour. Like in my head, even though I couldn't open my eyes, I was like, oh, I think it's Bobby. I think Bobby's in my room. Hey, Bobby. Oh wait, I can't talk. And it's kind of funny because last time we played a show, it wasn't really a tour, we just went down to Melbourne. But last time we were like playing away from home and sleeping in someone's house, I had sleep paralysis as well. And it was so funny because I was sharing a room with Paul again and halfway through the night, like I had a sleep paralysis thing, but I was dreaming at the time. And in my dream, Paul was talking to me and he was saying something. But at the same time, I could hear Paul in the room talking. There were 2 Pauls talking to me.
Whoa.
But he wasn't really talking to me. He just said, like, I just heard him mutter in the room, "Oh, for fuck's sake."
Oh, like, could he tell you was real Paul?
But I don't know if real Paul actually said that.
Okay.
It's just like my brain became conscious of the fact that I was asleep and that there was a real Paul in the room with me.
Right.
And then it became a thing where I was like, oh, this is funny. There's two Pauls at once. I want to tell Paul about this. And so I tried to like sit up and open my eyes and speak to Paul, but I couldn't. And so that was like the weird sleep paralysis thing. And I was like, oh, it's okay. I'll just tell him in the morning. And, and so when I woke up in the morning and I told Paul about that, at first he was like, oh, no, I'm pretty sure like I didn't say anything. Like you probably dreamt it. And then he was like, oh, wait, no, there was a moment where I was like on the internet and the Wi-Fi dropped out. So maybe I did say like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Oh, okay.
So I think I did actually hear him in the room at the same time that I was talking to him in my dream. And then I had a sleep paralysis thing where I wanted to tell real Paul about that experience and I couldn't.
Wow.
So yeah, it seems to be a tour thing. Yeah.
Do you want to do another topic?
Okay. Oh, wait. I'm not going to be picky this time. Okay. Oh, I thought that said mental health.
That's like, isn't that written on Paul's guitar strap?
Yeah.
Mental health.
Department of Mental Health.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great. And in our film clip, like when he wears it, it just says health on the strap, like at the front.
Right.
You can't see the back side of it.
There's the band Major Leagues.
I do know the band Major Leagues. They're lovely.
So Jamie from Major Leagues has another project called Pool Shop.
Yes.
And I got a Pool Shop shirt, and it's a white shirt, and it has Pool Shop in pink writing on it. And I played a We All Want To gig once at the Powerhouse wearing the Pool Shop shirt. And I was told afterwards by my friends that when I had my bass on, the guitar strap covers the L. So my shirt just said Poo Shop.
That's amazing. So
that's why it's important to practice, like, to put your guitar in front of the mirror.
and see what you look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Poo Shop. I love that. It's like the poo commodity. Like there's a whole industry of feces.
I mean, I'm sure there is.
Somewhere in the world. Well, manure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For fertilizer and stuff. Yeah, they sell it down the country and stuff.
Yeah.
You can buy poop.
Poo shops.
Yeah.
It is a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I instantly thought about human poo
Oh, okay, right.
and thought that would be weird. But I was like, no, like manure is like, that is a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't be embarrassed about your poo shop shirt. It's a thing.
I should open a poo shop. Make it come true.
Yeah. And call it, Scott's Poo Shop.
Yeah.
And you can wear your pool shop shirt, but you've always got to carry your bass around with you.
Yeah, with the
while
strap
you're working.
over it. Yeah. How's your mental health, Bre?
Terrible. It's terrible. Yeah.
What have you got going
on? Lots of anxiety and like depression's always there bubbling away under the surface currently.
Are there specific things in your life that trigger anxiety?
Used to be specific things, but now it's just like all sorts of things. So it's just so random. It just happens. Like I have panic attacks in moments where I just am not expecting them. I used to be able to be like, okay, it usually just happens. It's contained to these kinds of, like this one specific area of my life, and I can sort of expect it. Maybe that's like bringing it on. It's in a way, but yeah. Anyway, it was sort of like felt a bit more contained, but now it's just like spilling over into all sorts of unexpected areas. I'm like, wow, okay.
What area of your life did it used to be contained to?
My social life in France. So like, to go back to what we were talking about before, I was so invested in this relationship with Sylvain that when I like went over there, And to have like full context, I just had a psychotic episode with no like clear explanation for like what caused it, other than just like falling in love with someone. And so that really like shook me up. So I was really like, my sense of self was just sort of all over the place. Like I didn't really know who I was anymore. And then suddenly I was in another country where I didn't speak the language for the first time as a 19-year-old. And I'd just like fallen in like crazy in love with this, literally crazy in love with this person. And like I wanted like, and it felt so good. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want this to ever end. This is really, really important to me. And his friends are very, very important to him. And so it was like really terrifying, like meeting all of his friends and wanting, like I just wanted so bad for them to like me, but we didn't speak the same language. And so I had like no way of communicating my personality to them, and I didn't even know like who I was anymore at that point anyway. And so it became like anxiety really started like in that kind of context for me.
So what would you do when you're out with his friends and can't talk to them?
It was really weird because I've always been such an extrovert, and I didn't really know how to be shy. I didn't know how to deal with I didn't even know how to feel nervous. Like I was just so like as a teenager, like so outgoing and like such a big personality and just like no filter in my brain for anything, and you know, loved people. And so I just didn't know how to be among people and not talk to them. And like I just couldn't, because we didn't really speak the same language. And even when like they were making a lot of effort to speak in English for my benefit, they would be talking about very like culturally specific things that I didn't know or understand, and they were just like reminiscing about some TV show they used to watch as a kid, and I didn't really have anything to offer or contribute. And so it was just really difficult. So I just kind of like sit there trying very hard not to cry, and then when I couldn't, I'd just go into the bathroom and cry.
You know French now?
I do.
Did learning French overcome that, or is it just because you're not in that situation anymore that you don't get that anxiety?
It helped. It helped a lot. Like at the point where my French was at its best and when my anxiety was sort of lowest was when I was doing French lessons in France. That was at a school, so like wasn't private tuition. It was like, it was like a private kind of thing, but it was in like a classroom context. And school is such a familiar, like classrooms are such a familiar environment to me, and it was neutral. Like there was people that, like I was just hanging around people that I didn't know, and they were all in the same boat as me. And so that put me a lot at ease. Like it was just a really good environment to be in. And like I kind of had my own thing when I was going to those classes and those lessons, and it was like every day from like 8:30 until 4 p.m. or something for about like 6 weeks. And so that like I sort of had my own sort of thing going on in my own world. I wasn't just this like I don't know, appendix to, you know, my partner's life. And so that sort of gave me a lot more sense of self and identity, and so that helped just generally like ease the anxiety, and then my French skills improved, and so it was easier to kind of like talk to my partner's friends, and yeah, that was good.
But so now you'll have anxiety attacks and you can't pinpoint like what if there's a actual like external stimulus that causes it?
Yeah, it seems like lately it's mostly comes on when I'm just exhausted. Like it's a very physical thing. Like my body is just like it's just a wreck. And then, you know, your brain is part of your body. So my brain just like stops working as well. And it starts with like a concentration thing. Like I can't concentrate first of all. And then it sort of like start slipping, and it doesn't really matter like what the context I'm in is. It's just like I'll start having a panic attack, and I don't know, my therapist thinks otherwise, but I feel like there aren't really any like particular thought patterns or anything. It's just like I've run myself into the ground too much, and my brain's just shitting itself. And I just need rest. And then like it goes away. The thing with me is that any kind of mental health stuff, and this is the same with my psychotic episode, it's the same with like particularly bad bouts of depression, it comes on very quickly, but it resolves very quickly as well. So if I'm having a panic attack, there's at least a part of me that knows that it can go away very quickly if I just sort of look after myself. So that's helpful, I guess.
What did the psychotic episode look like? What happened?
I've actually had two. So the first one, I had just met Sylvain and fallen in love, and I became like really obsessed with like writing down every single thought that was in my head. I was actually studying a creative writing unit at uni at the time, and I just sort of casually heard about automatic writing, and I kind of thought like, oh, I kind of want to try that. Maybe it could be useful for an assignment for this unit that I've just started. And so I was writing a lot, and it just sort of got to this point where I actually couldn't stop. Like it was really compulsive, and I wasn't sleeping. I just had like this crazy amount of energy, and I couldn't sleep. I was sleeping very short hours, like increasingly like every night. I'd sleep a little bit less, and then eventually like I just stopped sleeping completely, just writing constantly. And then there was just a point where I just completely lost touch with reality, and I was sort of just stuck in these hallucinations, and I just became increasingly more immersed in them. So like by the end, it wasn't just that I was seeing or hearing things, like I could smell things that weren't there, and I could taste things that weren't there. Like I could feel like people touching me who weren't there. Like it was, all of my senses were engaged in this world that was only inside my head. And it was a lot like a dream, in the sense that there's like lots of like weird things, like you don't sort of know how you got from this place to this place. There's sort of like things happening parallel, like sort of stories happening parallel. There were times where it was really that kind of like bird's eye view kind of thing. I wasn't actually there, but all these things were going on. And my hallucinations were very awful, basically. Like I watched everyone I loved die over and over again. There was a point where like my body was just like this rotting corpse, but I was still kind of alive, and there were all these like maggots like eating my skin, and like I could feel that and I could smell that. It was like fucked up, and it was horrible. And the thing is that like my brain sort of records that as like a memory, like a lived experience, because all of my senses were like engaged in that. So that's, even though I'm obviously very aware that those were hallucinations, there's still part of me that lived through those things. So very traumatizing. And yeah, that was about 24 hours of hallucinations before I got taken to hospital and sedated. And when I woke up, I was me, just very groggy.
Because I guess at that level, like the sleep deprivation would be part of a cycle and just make things worse.
Yeah.
And contribute to a lot of that.
Yeah. I've learned over the years how important sleep is. Yeah. Especially for me. And then like the second episode I had like, I was feeling very similar in the sort of lead up to the hallucinations as I did the last time. So I was sort of able to recognize it. And it was actually Sylvain who recognized it first, because I was Skyping with him, because we're basically best friends still, which is really nice. And so I was Skyping with him, and I just said hi to him basically, and he was like, "Oh my God, are you high?" Like he noticed that like I was different, and I was like, oh, maybe, like, yeah. And then I started to realize like I was feeling exactly the same as I had like a couple of days out from when I started hallucinating the first time. And so, yeah, like I knew it was happening again, so I was able to sort of take steps to stop it before it got too weird.
So how did you do that?
I made sure my friends knew what was going on, and made sure there was going to be, because I live alone, that there was going to be people around a lot. And like, because, you know, I didn't know that hallucinations were going to come. I just knew that there was a very big risk of that. And so there was a point where I started to like hallucinate things. It was like with my phone, like it was doing weird things that are just not normal. I was like, oh, damn, I'm hallucinating again. Okay. And so I managed to call or message Eva, who called an ambulance for me, and they came and took me to hospital. And apparently at some point, like I remember I thought the world was ending, and the only way to save it was if everyone in the world did the Macarena at the same time in unison. And so I remember that being a thing. And then Eva told me, like, when I eventually, you know, became myself again, she was like, yeah, there was a point where you were trying to get all the nurses at RPA to dance the Macarena with you. So that actually happened. Like, it's weird because you don't know what your actual body's doing. You just, you know, you're stuck in here, and you may have just been lying in bed, but maybe you were trying to make nurses dance the Macarena with you. So sorry to everyone in emergency that night.
Well, I mean, we haven't tried it. At this stage, maybe it would help.
Can't hurt, right?
Maybe all this could have been prevented.
Yeah, so, but that second episode it had like a clear trigger. I'd been prescribed antidepressants, and I just had that effect. But it was kind of weird because they don't have that as like an officially listed side effect. It hasn't happened in enough cases for it to be officially a proper side effect of that medication. But in my particular case, there was nothing else different. It was a clear trigger. And when I stopped the medication, like I was fine again, and I've been fine since. So it was clearly that was what it was. But I remember I had to sort of stay at a mental health kind of facility for a few days to be monitored afterwards. But again, like they knocked me out. I woke up, I was fine again. And the doctor that I saw there, it had been like a few days, and it was the last like consultation I had with him. And I remember he said to me like, oh, okay, so what antipsychotic medication have they been giving you while you've been here? And I was like, oh, they haven't been giving me anything. Like, I just woke up and I was fine. And he was like, his mouth dropped. He was shocked. He was like, wow, this is great that you've recovered so quick. But this is the fastest recovery I've seen in my career from psychosis. And he was like, great that you recovered so quickly, but that means that you can also fall into these states very quickly. So I've like worked out that I got a weird brain. Obviously, if like I respond to these medications in ways that are really uncommon, if I go into these kinds of extreme states like that quickly, but also come out of them that quickly, like that's also very rare. Like, God damn, this brain is so annoying. It's such a full-time job trying to keep it healthy and keep on top of it.
Are there things you've worked out work well to get you feeling better again? Are there strategies and...
Yeah. I think I think I'm still trying to work out more immediate responses, like better ones for like when, you know, quite bad things are happening. But in general, just how I organize my life, it's pretty disorganized actually, but like the way I sort of prioritize things, I think really helps. So making my friendships and relationships with people my top priority is very, very helpful, because that, first of all, it just makes me feel good. But it also means like on a practical level that I have like a really good support network around me. So that means that, as I was describing before, like if I am in a very sort of dangerous place, then like I can be like, hey, this is happening, and I know that I can trust that they'll look after me. And so that's quite unusual. Like a lot of people will say that they really value their friendships and stuff like that, but in the world we live in, we're sort of compelled to make our careers, you know, the top priority. It's a very normal thing to just sort of say to someone, oh, I've got heaps of work actually, or I'm really exhausted from work. Let's postpone meeting up because I've got work. And so actually, I think for a lot of people, work is their top priority, or perhaps like family kind of commitments and stuff. So it can be like a very lonely thing having your friendships as the top priority. It means that other people always mean more to me than I do to them, I think, which is like a bit, like, I accept it, it's okay. but like there's enough people around me for that to not be a problem, if that makes sense. Like there's always going to be someone, especially if it's like a really, like if I'm in an emergency kind of situation.
Do you have friends that you know are really good at certain things that you might need to talk to?
They're all good. And like I said, I'm such an open book, and like I don't really, I overshare a lot. So like I don't really have any problems talking about anything to anyone, really. Like I don't sort of go to particular people for particular things. Like I'm very trusting with my friends, and yeah.
How long have you been seeing a therapist?
This one, we've had 2 sessions. But I've seen others at various points. Like when my first psychotic episode happened 10 years ago, I got put into an early psychosis intervention program, and there was a psychiatrist in that program and a social worker. And the social worker was amazing because she was so practical, and she just sort of helped me to, just at a very practical level. And she was also just like an amazing person to talk to. And she understood, because in that program, everyone else was still had symptoms, and I had no symptoms. So it was sort of this weird kind of thing. And she adapted her style to my needs very well. And she was really great. And the psychiatrist was awful. Like she was so fucked.
What was wrong with her?
Well, I think she just didn't know how to help me because I didn't need medication. And I wasn't on any medication. And that's what psychiatrists usually do, is they medicate people. And so I think the worst interaction that I can because this was a long time ago, but the worst was like, I remember she was asking me like, okay, so what's new with you? Like what's been going on? And I was like, I've been doing really well at uni actually. Like I got distinctions and high distinctions in this subject, and like I'm really happy with like how I'm doing with that, and really proud of myself. And she was like, okay. Is there anything else? I was like, I got a job like delivering pizzas. She was like, oh, good for you. That's great. That's really, really good. So happy for you.
Why do you think she reacted so differently?
Fuck you, lady. Like, fuck you. You don't know what I'm capable of doing. It was just, I think because in the context of her work, she's seeing people with like very extreme ongoing symptoms all the time who aren't able to work. And so I think she was just happy for herself that one of her patients got a job. I think it was more of a reflection of her than me, but fucking hell, it was just like so patronizing. Yeah, so she was not helpful at all. But yeah, that program was still good. And then I was seeing a psychologist when I went through my breakup, and there were things that were useful. Like it wasn't that awful overall. Like it was still worth it. I got a song out of something weird he said. So
what did he say?
He told, like, because Silva and I were still talking to each other, and it was hard for both of us, and we were kind of like helping each other through it, and he thought that was a terrible thing. He thought that was really bad, and he was trying to tell me that I shouldn't be Skyping with Silva. And he told me that I'm in mourning for the loss of our relationship, and that I'm grieving, and that every time I talk to him, I'm talking to death.
That's pretty extreme.
I was like, so he would always say like really weird things to me, and they were just so left of field that like in the moment I would just stop crying because I was confused. And then I'd go home like and think about it for at least like 2 weeks. I'd be like, what the fuck was that about? And then I got a song out of that lyric. So but like I eventually I was like, no, he's wrong, because it's not, the relationship hasn't died, it had changed, and I was adjusting to the change. So Sylvan is not death. I wasn't speaking to death. I was just dealing with change. So you're wrong, Mr. Whatever your face was.
What do you think makes a good therapist?
I've had so few good ones
Yeah.
that it's hard to, and you know, this new one's still pretty new, so kind of hard to say. Just like good listening skills, I guess, and being able to like adapt to their patients' needs. I think.
Sounds like pretty basic stuff for it. Like, do you think, would people be surprised how few have those skills?
Well, like I'm drawing from a very small pool of experiences here, so yeah, I don't know. I've heard a lot of people have like it's a relationship. So one therapist might be actually really good for someone and really bad for another person, you know. But yeah, God, it's hard. It's hard finding good counselors and whatnot.
But it sounds like you're really proactive with trying to maintain and improve your mental health.
Yeah.
Like you're not in denial about anything.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. No, I try. Like it's I think because it gets so extreme for me, and it can be very, very dangerous. I've got to, like, I feel like I don't have any other kind of choice, because if I just sort of let it go, then I wouldn't be here. So yeah, I got no other option. But it's fucking hard. It's hard because not only is my like mental health like quite extreme, for someone my age, my physical health is also very difficult to maintain, and both of those things are invisible. So, you know, I consider myself as someone who has invisible disability, and it's both of those aspects of my health, my physical and my mental health, because like I feel like I'm not really capable of working full time, because like first of all I get physically like more exhausted just having a chronic illness than you know, other young-ish people my age. Like I really get exhausted, and the consequences of that exhaustion can be really dangerous. So it's super important. And the thing is that like I need to make sure that I have time for my band and that I have time for my volunteer work at the community radio station, because like these are things that make me feel really good, and that, you know, helps to maintain my like mental health, which in turn helps my physical health, because, you know, when I'm really not in a good state, my arthritis kind of flares up. So like it's just, I need to have time for those things, so I don't feel like I can work full time, and I don't feel like I can run myself into the ground the way that other young people do. Like it's just, and it's become like a social expectation. Like I feel like people, like so many people do it, it's just kind of normal to be exhausted all the time. And so it's so weird being like, oh, I'm so exhausted, and then someone else is like, oh yeah, me too. And I'm like, I don't doubt that you're exhausted, but I'm like, I actually can't maintain this the way that other people might or seem to be able to. And it's so difficult.
Talking about like the youth aspect, do you, like I feel I have to do a lot of things because there's a chance I just won't be able to do stuff later on. Yeah, like you have a degenerative thing with muscular dystrophy. Like, is that part of it for you? Like wanting to do all these things?
Yeah, definitely. And it's so frustrating when I can't.
Yeah.
Like it really breaks my heart when I, you know, want to do it all. My enthusiasm levels are like through the roof, but my energy levels are really low. And so I always overcommit myself to things. And it's just so heartbreaking when I reach breaking point and I'm like, actually, I've got to cancel this and this and this. And I'm like, oh, but I really wanted to do this thing. And
I hate cancelling things. I can't do it most of the time.
Like you can't get to the point of actually cancelling things?
I
like
can't
you follow
bring myself
through?
to. Like, I'll do whatever else has to be done to fulfill an obligation. I hate cancelling things.
Yeah, I hate it too. But then I'm like, okay, if I don't cancel this, my brain's going to just drop dead. So, yeah, and it's so heartbreaking. And then I get really frustrated. Ugh, so much work.
Do you ever sometimes think about, like, what your life's going to be like in 20 years?
Yeah, in a way that I think other people don't. But yeah, like in the context of my arthritis a lot.
Yeah.
I think about that all the time. Like it's a daily kind of thing, almost.
What do you see?
It's not so much like 20 years. It's just sort of, it's more like a general, what's the future going to be like? This is very morbid, but I think about like what the end of my life is going to look like more than a specific sort of period of time. And I sort of wonder when that's going to happen. Because, so with my medication, which is amazing, and it gives me incredible quality of life, the thing about it is that it compromises my immune system a lot. And so I'm at very high risk of infections and lots of deadly infections. And people died in clinical trials, like, taking this medication. And there's all sorts of like cancers and all, it's fantastic. The risks are like quite high. And it's very expensive medication in terms of cost to the government. It's on pharmaceutical benefit scheme, so I get it at a reduced price, but it costs like, for one injection, it's $1,700, the full cost. And so the New South Wales government doesn't like to just give this medication to anyone, and I'm very closely monitored. And there's been an incident in the past where my rheumatologist, like every time I see her, she's like, have you experienced this, like checking for side effects. And one of the things was diarrhea. And she's like, have you had diarrhea? And I was like, oh, like a little bit kind of lately. It's been a bit more loose than usual, but it doesn't really hurt or anything. And she was like, okay, we've got to stop you on this medication. We've got to see you to, you've got to go see a butt doctor and, get a colonoscopy and blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh, okay. And so there was a period where I had to go off that particular medication and have, a colonoscopy. And the results of that was that it was fine. Like everything was actually fine. I'd switched to a vegetarian diet. And so I had a lot more fiber in my diet, which I think explained why I was having, looser poo, basically. Like there was an explanation for it. Everything was fine. But New South Wales Health said I can never have that medication again.
Whoa.
Just because I said that I'd had runny poo.
Wow.
So I was like, wow, okay, that's fucked. And so there's basically like another brand that's pretty much the same thing that I got moved on to. That my rheumatologist like kind of freaked. I was probably like 25 at this point. My rheumatologist like started freaking out. She was like, there's only like so many of these drugs that you can sort of move through. And so I'm really in this stuck in a rock and a hard place now, because now I understand that if I report any symptoms, there's a very high risk that I'm just going to be, taken off this medication. So in terms of like long-term stuff, I'm like, it feels like at some point I'm just not going to be able to have my medication anymore. And my quality of life will just like drop. So I've got my fingers crossed for like dying of an infection really quickly while on the medication. That's what I'm rooting for.
And having had a really good quality of life up to that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like that's like short and sweet, good quality of life. Like that's what I want. Longevity is so overrated. I think. And like I'd be so happy with that. Yeah, when I was in France, Sylvain's parents, at some point they had a friend who was quite elderly, But, you know, on the insides, I'm quite elderly. Like, I have the immune system of someone who's quite elderly, basically. And while we were there, he had bronchitis, and he'd had it for like a day, and then he died in his sleep.
Oh my God.
And he just didn't get to a doctor.
Wow.
Before it managed to get, well, I think it was 1 day or 2 days or something of bronchitis. And yeah, he just hadn't seen a doctor at that point. Like, it was something that could, you know, just some stupid antibiotics would have kept him alive, but he just died in his sleep. And I was like, at the time I was like, oh my God, that's so shocking. But now I think about that like all the time, and I'm like, that would be great. I would be so okay with that. Yeah. So that's what I think about a lot. Not necessarily like a 20 years thing, but just like, I just really want to be able to stay on this medication as long as possible and just like, you know, go out whenever. My bags are packed whenever death wants to come for me. I'll be like, yeah, cool, mate. Let's go.
Bre, do you want to play a song?
Oh, yeah. I can do that.
So, Bre, what song are you going to play and what's it about?
I'm going to play a very, very new song. It's the newest of all the new ones. It's called Silence, and it's about not feeling safe in your own home. Your front door is as innocuous as any other. You put your key in to unlock it and you wonder, would it really be so bad if next time you come out you're in a body bag? No one ever taught you how to pray, but oh, how you tried when the monster moved in with you that day. You keep it all locked up so well. Not even the nosiest neighbors can tell. Muffle your screams with a fresh coat of paint. And they'll never make any noise complaints. You're not sure if your memory is quite right. No, you can't trust it, 'cause your head's been knocked around too many times. I know your tears are falling just like bodies from a burning building, but if you want to stay alive, you've gotta keep those bodies quiet. I'll keep those bodies quiet. Make sure they fall in total silence. Keep those bodies quiet. Make sure they fall in total silence. That's my song.
Thank you so much, Bre.
Thanks, Scott.
You can find most of Library Siesta's recorded output on Bandcamp, except for some of the older songs like the one about Ben Lee, which you can't find anymore. And Bre's solo EP, Fuck You, I Won't Do What You Tell Me, Paul, is up on her own SoundCloud page. I've got some music things going on. I've just been on tour, actually, with Harley Young and the Haymakers. We played in Hobart this past weekend. Had a really good time there. And we're doing our last show of the tour this Friday, and this is for the year 2018, for the time travelers. So hopefully you'll hear this on time. Friday, the 20th of July, 2018, we'll be playing at Tomcat in Fortitude Valley here in Brisbane. So that's Harley Young and the Haymakers. It's our Counting Song single launch. Also playing with Dumb Things, Strange Seed. And I'm pulling double duty because I'll also be playing guitar for Adele Pickvance in her band. Stay tuned for next week's episode where I talk to Bre's bandmate, Paul McAdam, the subject of that spiteful EP that she made. Oh, before I forget, a note and correction thing. Thalassophobia is specifically a fear of the sea or ocean. Aquaphobia is a more general fear of water, and hydrophobia is a specific aversion to drinking water, which usually manifests in late-stage rabies victims. So now you're up to date on your phobias. Thanks for listening. Hit me up on Gimme Empathy Podcast at gmail.com, on Instagram, Facebook. Find me, hunt me down, send me messages and things. I always like hearing from people. Until next time, stay hydrated.